The shocking betrayal. The message that shattered everything. Welcome to Heartfire Obsession. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The text message arrived at 2:47 a.m., and it destroyed everything Elena Hart thought she knew about love. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Marcus is working late again. We'll have the whole evening to ourselves. Wear that red dress I bought you. Jay? Elena stared at her husband's phone, her hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped it. The screen's blue glow illuminated her face in the darkness of their bedroom, casting shadows that seemed to mirror the darkness spreading through her heart. Marcus lay beside her, sleeping peacefully, his chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of someone who had nothing to hide, nothing to fear, nothing to regret. But he did. Oh God, he did. The perfect marriage, or so she thought. 6 hours earlier, Elena had been the happiest woman in Manhattan. She and Marcus Hart had just celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary at Le Bernardin, the restaurant where he'd proposed to her 7 years ago. The evening had been perfect. Champagne, oysters, the works. Marcus had given her a stunning diamond bracelet that caught the candlelight like captured stars, and she'd given him vintage cufflinks that had belonged to his late father. To us, Marcus had said, raising his glass, his green eyes warm with what she'd believed was genuine love. To 5 years of the best decision I ever made. Elena had clinked her glass against his, her heart so full she thought it might burst. To forever, she'd whispered back. Forever. What a cruel joke that word had become. Elena was 32 years old, a successful art gallery curator with honey blonde hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and hazel eyes that changed color with her mood. Green when she was happy, gray when she was sad, and now, staring at that text message, they'd turned almost black with the storm of emotions raging inside her. She'd met Marcus at a charity gala 8 years ago, and it had been love at first sight. He was everything she'd ever dreamed of: handsome, successful, charming, attentive. He was a senior partner at one of New York's most prestigious law firms, the kind of man who commanded respect when he walked into a room. Their courtship had been a whirlwind of romance straight out of a fairy tale. Weekend trips to the Hamptons, surprise flowers delivered to her office, handwritten love notes tucked into her purse. Marcus had pursued her with the single-minded determination he brought to his cases in court, and she'd fallen hard and fast. Their wedding had been featured in the New York Times, a lavish affair at the Plaza Hotel with 300 guests and enough flowers to fill a botanical garden. The first 3 years of their marriage had been blissful. They'd bought a brownstone in the West Village, decorated it together, talked about starting a family. Marcus worked long hours, but when he was home, he was present, or so she'd thought. He remembered the little things, like how she took her coffee and that she loved peonies more than roses. He still kissed her goodbye every morning and told her he loved her every night. How had she not seen it? How had she been so blind? The unraveling begins. Elena's hands shook as she scrolled through Marcus's messages. She'd picked up his phone by accident. They had the same model, both in black cases, when she'd heard it buzzing insistently on his nightstand. She'd been half asleep, reaching automatically to silence what she thought was her own phone, but when she'd seen the name on the screen, her blood had run cold. Jade. Jade Morrison. The name was branded in Elena's memory now, seared into her consciousness like a hot iron against flesh. She forced herself to scroll up, to read the entire conversation, even though each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. The messages went back months, 6 months, to be exact. 6 months of lies, 6 months of betrayal, 6 months of her husband living a double life, while she remained blissfully, stupidly ignorant. Missing you already, one message read, sent just 3 days ago while Marcus had supposedly been in Boston for a deposition. That thing you did last night. I can't stop thinking about it. Another one said, sent 2 weeks ago, the same night Marcus had told her he was having drinks with clients. I think I'm falling in love with you, Jade had written a month ago. And Marcus's response, the one that made bile rise in Elena's throat, I know I am. Elena's vision blurred with tears, but she kept reading, kept torturing herself with evidence of her husband's infidelity. There were photos too, Jade in lingerie, Jade laughing at some restaurant Elena didn't recognize, Jade and Marcus together in what looked like a hotel room, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera with expressions of unguarded happiness that Elena realized she hadn't seen on her husband's face in months. Maybe years. Jade Morrison was 26 years old. Elena had seen enough photos to guess, and a quick Instagram search confirmed it. She was an associate at Marcus's law firm, which meant she was smart, ambitious, and exactly the kind of bright young thing that middle-aged men threw away their marriages for. She had long dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and legs that went on for miles. She was beautiful in that effortless way that made other women hate her, and she'd stolen Elena's husband without even trying. Or maybe she had tried. Maybe this was calculated, deliberate seduction. Maybe Jade Morrison had looked at Marcus Hart, senior partner, wealthy, handsome, married, and decided he was exactly what she wanted. The moment of truth. Elena's hands had stopped shaking now. In their place came something else, something cold and sharp and infinitely more dangerous than tears. She set the phone down carefully on the nightstand, exactly where Marcus had left it, and lay back down beside him, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Her mind was racing, cataloging every late night at the office, every business trip, every time Marcus had been too tired for intimacy, every weekend he'd spent catching up on work instead of spending time with her. The signs had been there all along, she realized. She'd just chosen not to see them, chosen to believe in the fairy tale instead of facing the truth. How many times had Jade Morrison been in their home? Because surely she had been. Elena remembered Marcus mentioning that some associates were working on cases at the house, using their home office for weekend research sessions. Had they been together in Elena's house? In her guest room? In her bed? The thought made her stomach churn, and she had to press her hand against her mouth to keep from being sick. Marcus stirred beside her, rolling over, his arm reaching out automatically to drape across her waist. A gesture of casual intimacy that they'd shared for 7 years, that now felt like a violation. Elena went rigid, every muscle in her body tensing against his touch, but she forced herself to remain still, to keep breathing normally, to not wake him. Not yet. Because Elena was realizing something important, something that cut through the fog of pain and betrayal clouding her mind. If she confronted Marcus now, in the heat of this moment, with tears streaming down her face and her voice breaking with emotion, he would have all the power. He would make excuses, offer explanations, maybe even admit to the affair and beg for forgiveness. He would control the narrative. And Elena was done letting Marcus control anything. The woman she used to be. People who knew Elena Hart thought they knew her story. She was the poor girl who'd made good, the scholarship kid from a broken home in Queens who'd worked her way through Columbia University, who'd clawed her way up from intern to curator at one of Manhattan's most prestigious galleries. She was the sweet, kind, optimistic woman who saw the best in everyone, who believed in love and second chances and happily ever after. But what they didn't know, what Marcus didn't know, was that Elena Hart had learned survival young. Her father had abandoned the family when she was 8, leaving her mother to raise 3 kids on a waitress's salary. Elena had learned to smile when she was screaming inside, to act grateful when she was furious, to plan and scheme and fight for every single thing she'd ever achieved. She'd learned that sometimes the only way to win was to let your opponent think they'd already won, to lull them into complacency before you struck. And she'd learned that revenge, served properly, was a dish that required patience. Elena lay in the darkness beside her cheating husband, and she began to plan. Because Marcus thought he was smart, thought he was careful, thought he could have his cake and eat it too. Keep his devoted wife and his exciting mistress, maintain his respectable image while indulging in his sordid little affair. He was wrong. The performance begins. When Elena's alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., she rose from bed with a smile on her face that felt like it might crack her features. Marcus was already awake, scrolling through his phone, deleting messages from Jade. Elena realized with a fresh wave of fury, but he looked up when she stirred. "Morning, beautiful," he said, leaning over to kiss her cheek. Elena returned the kiss, her lips brushing against his stubbled jaw, and she marveled at how easy it was to pretend, how natural the lie came to her lips when she said, "Good morning, handsome. Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," Marcus replied, stretching. "Last night was perfect, wasn't it? The dinner, the champagne. I'm so lucky to have you, Elena. You know that, right?" "I know." she said softly, and the words tasted like ashes in her mouth. I'm lucky too. She went through her morning routine on autopilot. Shower, hair, makeup, the blue dress Marcus said brought out her eyes. She made coffee exactly the way he liked it, scrambled eggs with chives, whole wheat toast. She packed his lunch, including the oatmeal cookies she'd baked yesterday, back when she'd still believed her marriage was real. You're amazing, Marcus said, kissing her goodbye at the door, his briefcase in one hand, his phone, that treacherous device, in the other. I've got a late meeting tonight, so don't wait up. Probably be home around 10. Another late night? Elena asked, keeping her voice light, curious rather than accusatory. Yeah, sorry, babe. Big case, you know how it is. Of course, Elena said, straightening his tie, her fingers gentle against the silk. I know how hard you work. I'll save you some dinner. Marcus smiled, that charming smile that had first captured her heart 8 years ago, and kissed her once more before heading out into the early morning Manhattan streets. Elena closed the door behind him and leaned against it, her smile finally dropping, her mask finally cracking. But she didn't cry. She was done crying. Instead, she pulled out her own phone and began making calls, gathering ammunition. Elena's first call was to Rebecca Chun, her best friend since college and one of the city's most ruthless divorce attorneys. Rebecca answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and alert despite the early hour. Elena? What's wrong? I need your help, Elena said, her voice steady. Marcus is having an affair. There was a pause, then Rebecca's voice came back, harder now, professional. Are you sure? I saw the messages. 6 months worth. Her name is Jade Morrison. She's an associate at his firm. They're in love. The words hurt to say, but Elena forced them out anyway, refusing to flinch from the truth. That bastard, Rebecca breathed. Elena, I'm so sorry. What do you need? Everything, Elena said. I need to know my rights, my options, and I need to know how to make sure I come out of this with everything I'm entitled to. The brownstone, the accounts, everything. I'm not going to let him walk away from this unscathed, Rebecca. He doesn't get to destroy our marriage and keep his perfect life. Damn right he doesn't, Rebecca said fiercely. Listen, don't confront him yet. Don't let him know you know. We need to document everything first, gather evidence, secure your assets, build an airtight case. Can you do that? Can you pretend everything's normal while we prepare? Yes, Elena said without hesitation. I can do that. Because she'd been pretending her whole life. Pretending she belonged in a world of wealth and privilege when she came from nothing. Pretending she was confident when she was terrified. Pretending she was happy when she was screaming inside. What was one more performance? The investigation. Over the next week, Elena became a detective in her own marriage. She hired a private investigator named Jack Morrison, no relation to Jade, thankfully, who came highly recommended by Rebecca. Jack was in his 50s, ex-NYPD, with the kind of weathered face that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. I need photographs, Elena told him during their first meeting in a coffee shop in Soho, far from anywhere Marcus might see them. I need evidence of the affair, documentation of every time they meet, every hotel they visit, everything. I need it to be irrefutable. Jack nodded, his pen moving across his notepad. How long has this been going on? 6 months that I know of. Possibly longer. And you want to wait to confront him? Yes. I want everything in place first. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my move. Jack studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes shrewd. You're handling this remarkably well, Mrs. Hart. Most people in your situation are a mess. Elena smiled, a cold, sharp thing that didn't reach her eyes. I'm good at compartmentalizing, Mr. Morrison. It's a skill I learned young. And please, call me Elena. The investigation moved quickly. Within 3 days, Jack had confirmed what Elena already knew. Marcus and Jade were meeting regularly, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at Jade's apartment in Chelsea, sometimes even during lunch breaks in Marcus's office with the door locked. The photographs were damning. Marcus and Jade kissing in the back of a taxi, entering a hotel together, having intimate dinners at restaurants across the city. But Elena wanted more. She wanted to understand the scope of the betrayal, wanted to know if there had been others before Jade, wanted to have every piece of ammunition she could possibly gather before she pulled the trigger. She also began documenting their finances, making copies of bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds. Marcus had always handled their money. He was the lawyer, after all, the one who understood these things. But Elena discovered she was perfectly capable of understanding them herself when she put her mind to it. What she found disturbed her. Following the money, there were withdrawals Marcus couldn't explain. $20,000 here, $15,000 there, all marked as business expenses, but with no corresponding documentation. There were credit card bills showing purchases at jewelry stores, expensive restaurants, hotels. There was a paper trail leading to places Marcus had supposedly never been, for business trips that didn't exist. He'd been spending their money, her money, because Elena had contributed significantly to their joint accounts over the years, on his mistress. He'd bought jade jewelry, taken her on trips, wined and dined her with the fruits of Elena's labor. The red dress Jade had mentioned in her text? Marcus had bought it with their joint credit card. The charge was right there, dated 3 months ago, from a boutique in the meatpacking district. $2,000 for a dress he'd never seen Elena wear, because it had never been for Elena at all. Elena sat in her home office, surrounded by spreadsheets and bank statements, and felt something inside her harden into diamond. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about theft, about Marcus stealing from her, stealing her trust, her love, her money, her time. And Elena was going to make him pay for every single stolen penny. The other woman. Elena knew she should hate Jade Morrison. And she did, in a way. Hated her for her youth, her beauty, her willingness to sleep with a married man. But Elena also understood that Marcus was the one who'd made vows. Marcus was the one who'd promised to forsake all others. Marcus was the one who'd stood before God and their families and pledged his life to her. Jade Morrison was complicit, yes. But Marcus' heart was guilty. Still, Elena wanted to know more about the woman who'd stolen her husband. So she did what any sensible woman in the digital age would do. She stalked Jade's social media. Jade's Instagram was public, filled with carefully curated photos of her glamorous life. Brunch with the girls at trendy restaurants. Yoga poses on rooftops with the Manhattan skyline behind her. Artfully arranged shots of her morning coffee, her designer handbags, her perfectly manicured nails. There were no photos of Marcus, of course. Jade was smart enough to keep the affair off social media. But Elena could read between the lines. The sudden uptick in expensive dinners starting 6 months ago, the new jewelry that appeared on Jade's wrists and around her neck, the weekend trips to places like Newport and Martha's Vineyard that coincided exactly with Marcus's supposed business trips. Elena scrolled through months of posts, studying this woman who'd become such a central figure in her life without her knowledge. And what she saw surprised her. Jade Morrison wasn't just some empty-headed gold digger. She was smart. Columbia Law, Order of the Coif, articles published in prestigious law journals. She volunteered at a legal aid clinic on weekends. She had friends who seemed genuinely fond of her, a family she posted about lovingly, ambitions that extended beyond landing a rich husband. In another life, Elena thought, she and Jade might have been friends, but not in this life. In this life, Jade Morrison had made herself Elena's enemy, and Elena didn't forgive her enemies. The turning point. 2 weeks after discovering the affair, Elena attended the annual gala for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a glittering event that brought together New York's elite. Marcus was supposed to accompany her. They'd had the tickets for months, had planned to use the evening to network and socialize. But at the last minute, Marcus had claimed a work emergency, insisting he couldn't make it. "I'm so sorry, babe," he'd said, looking genuinely regretful. "This case is killing me. But you should still go. You love this event. Take Rebecca, make a girl's night of it." So Elena had gone, wearing a stunning emerald green gown that made her eyes glow like jewels, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon, diamonds at her throat and ears. Rebecca had accompanied her, stunning in burgundy, and they'd made quite the entrance, turning heads as they walked through the museum's grand halls. And that's when Elena saw them. Marcus and Jade. They were at the bar in one of the smaller galleries, partially hidden behind a marble column. But Elena's eyes found them as if drawn by some magnetic force. Jade was wearing a red dress. The red dress, Elena realized, the one Marcus had bought her. Marcus's hand was on the small of her back, intimate and possessive, and they were laughing about something, their heads close together, completely absorbed in each other. Marcus, who'd claimed a work emergency. Marcus, who'd said he couldn't possibly attend. Marcus, who was supposed to be at the office right now, working late. Elena's vision went white at the edges, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Rebecca grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Don't," Rebecca hissed in her ear. "Not here. Not yet. You're not ready." But Elena wasn't looking at Marcus anymore. She was looking at Jade, really looking at her for the first time in person rather than through photographs or social media posts. And Jade was looking back, her eyes widening in recognition as she realized who Elena was. For a long moment, the two women stared at each other across the crowded gallery. Wife and mistress, past and future, everything that had been and everything that might be. And in Jade's eyes, Elena saw something she hadn't expected. Guilt. It was there, clear as day, before Jade quickly looked away, whispering something to Marcus that made him turn, his face draining of color as he spotted Elena and Rebecca. Elena smiled. It was the most genuine smile she'd managed in 2 weeks, and it was absolutely terrifying. She raised her champagne glass in a mock toast, her eyes locked with her husband's, and then she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus to stew in his panic, to wonder what she'd seen, what she knew, what she was going to do. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him lie awake at night the way she had, his mind racing, his stomach churning, his world tilting on its axis. Because Elena Hart was done being the victim of this story, it was time to become the villain. And God help anyone who stood in her way. To be continued in Part 2. Heartbreak and Revenge. What will Elena do now that she's seen Marcus and Jade together? How will she exact her revenge? And what shocking secrets will be revealed as she digs deeper into her husband's betrayal? Stay tuned to find out. Heartbreak and Revenge. The morning after, Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed beside Marcus, who'd come home at 1 a.m., reeking of guilt and Jade's perfume, and stared at the ceiling, her mind working through every possible scenario, every potential move and counter-move in the game that had become her marriage. Marcus had tried to explain his presence at the gala. "I finished the emergency earlier than expected," he'd said, his voice too casual, too practiced. "Ran into some colleagues. Thought I'd stop by for a drink. Didn't want to interrupt your girl's night by calling." Elena had said nothing, just nodded and smiled, and the uncertainty in Marcus's eyes had been delicious. He didn't know what she'd seen, how much she knew. He was operating in the dark now, and Elena held all the cards. She liked it that way. When morning came, Elena rose before dawn and went for a run through the quiet West Village streets. She needed to think, needed to plan, needed the endorphins and the clarity that came with physical exertion. By the time she returned home, showered, and dressed, she knew exactly what her next move would be. The art of war. "I want to meet with her," Elena told Rebecca over coffee at their usual spot in the West Village. It was 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and the cafe was filled with young professionals catching up on work, tourists planning their day, and couples enjoying lazy weekend mornings together. Elena watched them all with a detachment that came from no longer belonging to the world of simple pleasures and uncomplicated relationships. Rebecca nearly choked on her latte. "Meet with who? Jade? Are you insane?" "Probably," Elena said calmly, stirring sugar into her coffee with methodical precision. "But I need to look her in the eye. I need to understand what she sees in him, what he promised her, what their endgame is. Is she in love with him? Does she want him to leave me? Or is she just enjoying the thrill of the affair?" "Elena, that's a terrible idea. It could compromise everything we're building." "It won't," Elena interrupted. "Because I'm not going to reveal what I know. I'm going to approach her woman to woman, wife to mistress, and I'm going to give her a chance." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "A chance to do what?" "To do the right thing." Elena's smile was thin. "Or to make a choice that will determine how merciful I am when this all comes crashing down." It took Elena 3 days to engineer a meeting with Jade Morrison. She couldn't approach her directly. That would be too obvious, too confrontational. Instead, she used her connections in the art world to arrange for Jade to receive an invitation to a private gallery showing. A small, intimate affair for young professionals interested in contemporary art. Elena knew from her social media stalking that Jade fancied herself an art lover, frequently posting photos from museums and galleries. She knew Jade wouldn't be able to resist an exclusive invitation to a private showing at a prestigious gallery. And she was right. The meeting. The gallery was in Chelsea, all white walls and track lighting, showcasing the work of an up-and-coming artist whose abstract pieces commanded six-figure prices. There were perhaps 40 people in attendance, sipping wine and nibbling on canapes while discussing the meaning and symbolism of paintings that looked to Elena like expensive chaos. She spotted Jade the moment the younger woman walked in, her dark hair falling in glossy waves over her shoulders, her body poured into a little black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Jade accepted a glass of wine from a passing waiter and began circulating through the gallery, pausing before various paintings with the expression of someone who took art seriously. Elena waited 20 minutes, letting Jade get comfortable, letting her guard come down. Then she made her approach. "It's interesting, isn't it?" Elena said, coming to stand beside Jade in front of a particularly chaotic canvas of red and black slashes. The way the artist uses color to convey violence and passion simultaneously. Jade turned, and Elena watched recognition and shock flash across her face in quick succession. Up close, she was even more beautiful than her photographs suggested. Flawless skin, full lips, dark eyes that were currently wide with surprise. "Mrs. Hart," Jade said, her voice carefully neutral despite the color draining from her face. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Elena, please," Elena said, her voice warm and friendly as if they were old acquaintances rather than rivals. "And yes, I'm one of the curators at Gallery Moderne. I helped organize this showing. You're Jade Morrison, aren't you? You work with my husband." It wasn't a question. They both knew it wasn't a question. Jade's throat worked as she swallowed, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. "Yes, I'm an associate at the firm. Marcus speaks highly of you," Elena continued, her voice never losing its pleasant tone. "He says you're brilliant, that you have a real future ahead of you. It's so nice to finally meet you in person." The subtext hung between them like smoke. I know what you've done. I know who you are." Jade's eyes darted toward the exit, but Elena moved slightly, blocking her path without being obvious about it. "Why don't we get some air?" Elena suggested. "It's quite stuffy in here, don't you think?" The confrontation. They stepped out into the cool evening air, the noise of the gallery fading behind them as they walked a few doors down to a small parklet where benches sat beneath trees strung with fairy lights. Elena settled onto one of the benches, and after a moment's hesitation, Jade sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "How long have you known?" Jade asked finally, her voice small. 2 weeks, Elena said. "I found the messages on Marcus's phone. All of them. The photos, the plans, the declarations of love. Everything." Jade's face crumpled, tears springing to her eyes. "Mrs. Hart, Elena, I'm so sorry. I never meant." "Never meant what?" Elena interrupted, her voice sharp now, cutting. "Never meant to sleep with my husband? Never meant to carry on an affair for 6 months? Never meant to fall in love with a married man? Which part did you not mean, Jade?" "All of it," Jade whispered, tears streaming down her face now, ruining her makeup. "None of it. I don't know. It just happened, and then it kept happening, and I tried to stop, but I couldn't, and now I'm in so deep I don't know how to get out." Elena studied the younger woman, noting the genuine distress in her voice, the way her hands trembled as she wiped at her tears. "Do you love him?" "I think so," Jade said miserably. "But I also hate myself for it. I hate what I've become. I never thought I'd be this person, the other woman, the mistress. My own father had an affair that destroyed my family. I swore I'd never do that to someone else. And yet here I am." "Here you are," Elena agreed. "So the question is, what are you going to do about it?" Jade looked up at her, confusion evident through her tears. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Elena said, leaning forward, her hazel eyes, gray now, storm-colored, boring into Jade's dark ones. "You have a choice to make. You can continue this affair, keep sneaking around, keep helping my husband destroy our marriage. Or you can end it, walk away, do the right thing even though it hurts." "He won't let me go," Jade whispered. "I've tried to end it 3 times, and every time he convinces me to give him another chance. He says he's going to leave you, that he just needs to find the right time, that he wants to be with me." "He's lying," Elena said flatly. "Marcus isn't going to leave me. We have a prenup, did you know that? He'd lose everything. The brownstone, half his assets, his reputation. Marcus loves his lifestyle too much to sacrifice it for anyone, even you. The words hit Jade like physical blows, and Elena watched the realization dawn on the younger woman's face. The understanding that she'd been used, that she was never going to get the happy ending she'd been promised. He said he loved me, Jade said, her voice breaking. Maybe he does, in his way, Elena said, and she was surprised to find that her voice wasn't entirely without sympathy. But Marcus loves himself more. He always has. The proposition. They sat in silence for a long moment, the sounds of the city washing over them, traffic, voices, the distant wail of a siren. Elena let Jade cry, let her process the truth she'd probably known deep down but had been avoiding. Finally, when Jade's tears had slowed to sniffles, Elena spoke again. I'm going to give you a choice, Jade. One chance to do the right thing. Jade looked up at her, her face blotchy and tear-stained. What kind of choice? End the affair. Tonight. Send Marcus a text telling him it's over, that you can't do this anymore, that you're done. Block his number, avoid him at work, make it clear that whatever you had is finished. Elena's voice was steady, authoritative. Do that, and I'll make sure you come out of this unscathed. No scandal, no professional consequences, nothing that will damage your career. And if I don't? Jade asked, though she sounded more curious than defiant. Elena's smile was cold. Then I'll destroy you. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did, the partners at the firm, your colleagues, your family, everyone. I'll make sure you're fired, blacklisted, that you never work in a respectable law firm again. And then I'll take everything from Marcus too, make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment. You'll both lose. Jade stared at her, shock evident on her face. You'd really do that? Without hesitation, Elena said, I've spent 2 weeks documenting everything, gathering evidence, building a case. I have photographs, messages, financial records. I have enough ammunition to end both your careers and make you social pariahs. The only question is whether I have to use it. Why are you giving me a choice? Jade asked, her voice small. Why not just destroy me anyway? Elena considered the question, realizing she wasn't entirely sure of the answer herself. Because despite everything, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're a stupid person who made terrible choices, but not a fundamentally bad one. And because part of me wants Marcus to lose you too, wants him to face the consequences of his actions without the consolation prize of his mistress waiting in the wings. She stood up, smoothing her dress. You have until midnight tonight to decide. Send him that text, or don't. But know that whatever happens next is on you. Elena walked away then, leaving Jade alone on the bench, her future balanced on the edge of a knife. The wait. The hours that followed were excruciating. Elena went home, made dinner, ate without tasting it. Marcus was working late. Actually working late this time, or so his calendar said, and she was alone with her thoughts and her phone, checking it obsessively for any sign that Jade had made her choice. At 9:47 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's done. I'm so sorry for everything. You're stronger than I'll ever be. Jay? Elena stared at the message, feeling something complicated twist in her chest, triumph mixed with sadness, vindication mixed with regret. She wanted to hate Jade purely, but she couldn't quite manage it. Instead, she felt something closer to pity. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Marcus. Elena answered, keeping her voice sleepy. Hello. Elena. Hey, sorry to wake you. Marcus's voice was strained, tight, with barely controlled emotion. I'm going to be really late tonight. Don't wait up. This case is getting complicated. He's lying, Elena thought. Jade broke up with him, and now he's somewhere licking his wounds, trying to figure out what went wrong. Of course, Elena said sweetly. Take your time. I'll see you in the morning. She hung up and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The first move was hers. Escalation. Over the next 3 weeks, Elena watched her husband unravel. Marcus tried desperately to contact Jade. Elena knew because Jack, her private investigator, was monitoring everything. But Jade had kept her word. She'd blocked his number, avoided him at the office, even requested a transfer to a different department to make sure they wouldn't have to work together. Marcus became irritable, distracted. He snapped at Elena over minor things, stayed out late more often, drank more than usual. He was grieving, Elena realized. mourning the loss of his mistress, and the irony wasn't lost on her. Her husband was heartbroken while she, the actual victim of his infidelity, had to pretend not to notice. It would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. Elena used this time to continue strengthening her position. She continued 15:34 met with Rebecca regularly, going over every detail of the divorce she was planning. She moved money into accounts Marcus couldn't access, secured her assets, made copies of every important document. She was building a fortress around herself, and when she was done, Marcus wouldn't be able to touch her. But she wasn't ready to file yet. She had one more move to make, one more piece to put in place before she could end this charade once and for all. The revenge. Elena's revenge began with a dinner party. She'd been planning it for weeks, ostensibly to celebrate a successful acquisition at the gallery, a rare collection of 19th-century landscapes that had garnered significant media attention. She'd invited all the right people, colleagues from the art world, Marcus's partners from the firm, society figures who mattered in Manhattan's elite circles, including Jade Morrison. Marcus had been suspicious when he'd seen Jade's name on the guest list. "Is that really necessary?" he'd asked, his voice tight. "Inviting associates? This is supposed to be intimate." "Don't be silly," Elena had said breezily. "Jade's brilliant, and she's interested in art. Besides, it's good for the firm to have representation here. Networking, you know." She'd watched the panic flash across Marcus's face before he'd hidden it behind a forced smile. He knew he couldn't object without revealing why it made him uncomfortable, so he nodded and said nothing more. The dinner party was held at their brownstone, the table set with their best china and crystal, flowers from Elena's favorite florist arranged artfully in the center. The food was catered by a top chef, the wine selections impeccable. Everything was perfect, elegant, refined. Elena had chosen her dress carefully, a deep burgundy that made her skin glow, her hair loose in soft waves, diamonds at her throat. She looked beautiful, confident, completely in control. She looked like a woman who owned her world, which, in a sense, she did. Jade arrived early, looking nervous, her eyes darting to Marcus and then quickly away. Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming anxiously against his wine glass. The tension between them was palpable, and Elena savored it like fine wine. "Jade, I'm so glad you could make it," Elena said warmly, greeting the younger woman with air kisses that made Jade flinch. "Come, let me introduce you to everyone." The game. Throughout the evening, Elena orchestrated conversations like a master conductor leading an orchestra. She steered discussions toward topics that made Marcus uncomfortable, watched him squirm as she praised Jade's intelligence and dedication, as she mentioned in passing how much time Marcus had been spending at the office lately, how devoted he was to his work. "Too devoted sometimes," Elena said with a light laugh, her hand resting on Marcus's arm in a gesture of casual affection that made his muscles go rigid. "I barely see him anymore. I keep telling him he needs to delegate more, trust his associates to handle things." She turned to Jade, her smile sharp as glass. "Wouldn't you agree, Jade? Surely Marcus doesn't need to work quite as many late nights as he does." Jade's face paled, her wine glass trembling in her hand. I think Mr. Hard is very dedicated to his clients." "Oh, please, call him Marcus," Elena insisted. "We're all friends here." The evening continued in this vein, Elena pulling strings like a puppeteer, watching her husband and his former mistress suffer through excruciating hours of forced proximity and veiled references to their affair. It was theater, psychological warfare, and Elena was giving the performance of her life. By the time the last guest left, Marcus was a wreck, his tie loosened, his face flushed with wine and stress. He turned to Elena, his eyes searching hers, trying to understand what game she was playing. "Why did you do that?" he asked, his voice low. "Why did you invite her here?" Elena looked at him, her hazel eyes clear and cold. "Do what?" "I invited a brilliant young associate from your firm to a professional gathering." "Why would that be a problem, Marcus?" "It's not. He stopped, realizing he'd walked into a trap, that anything he said would implicate him. "You just what?" Elena asked innocently, tilting her head. Marcus shook his head, pouring himself another drink. "Nothing. Forget it." But Elena knew he wouldn't forget it. He'd lie awake tonight wondering what she knew, how much she'd guessed, whether Jade had told her everything. He'd be paranoid, anxious, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Good. Let him suffer the way she had suffered. The final piece. The next morning, Elena met with Jack Morrison one last time. He handed her a thick folder containing every piece of evidence he'd gathered: photographs, documented meetings, financial records showing Marcus's expenditures on his affair, testimony from witnesses who'd seen Marcus and Jade together. "This is everything," Jack said. "More than enough for any court. He doesn't stand a chance." "Thank you," Elena said, accepting the folder and writing him a check. "You've been invaluable." Jack studied her for a moment. "Can I give you some advice?" "Of course. Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with it afterward. Revenge is satisfying in the moment, but it has a way of hollowing you out if you're not careful. Don't become someone you don't recognize." Elena considered his words, then smiled. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm not becoming someone I don't recognize. I'm becoming someone I should have been all along. Someone who doesn't let people hurt them without consequences." She left the meeting and went straight to Rebecca's office, where they finalized the divorce papers. Elena would file on Monday, blindsiding Marcus at work, serving him in front of his colleagues and partners. She'd make sure everyone knew why, not through crude announcements, but through careful leaks, strategic conversations, the kind of subtle social warfare that the Manhattan elite excelled at. By the time Elena was done, Marcus would be a pariah, his reputation in tatters, his career damaged if not destroyed. And Elena would have everything: the brownstone, her freedom, and the satisfaction of watching the man who'd betrayed her face the consequences of his choices. The moment of truth. But first, she had one last thing to do. That evening, Elena cooked Marcus's favorite meal: steak with roasted vegetables, the mashed potatoes he loved, the chocolate cake his mother used to make. She set the table beautifully, lit candles, put on soft music. She dressed in the outfit Marcus had always said he loved, styled her hair the way he preferred. When Marcus came home, he stopped in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. "What's all this?" "I wanted to do something special," Elena said, smiling. "We haven't had a proper evening together in so long. Just the two of us." Marcus looked suspicious, but he couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful. They sat down to dinner, and Elena played the perfect wife, attentive, interested in his day, laughing at his stories, touching his hand across the table. "This is nice," Marcus admitted, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "I've missed this." "Missed us? Have you?" Elena asked, her voice soft. "I've missed us too." They finished dinner and moved to the living room, where Elena poured them both brandy and settled onto the couch beside her husband. Marcus relaxed into the cushions, one arm around her shoulders, completely oblivious to what was coming. "Marcus," Elena said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He tensed immediately. "What is it? Are you happy?" Elena looked up at him, her eyes clear and direct. "In our marriage, I mean. Are you happy with me, with us, with the life we've built?" Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena saw everything she needed to see. "Of course I'm happy," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I'm not," Elena said simply. "I haven't been happy in a long time, and I don't think you have either." "Elena." "It's okay," she interrupted, patting his hand. "Really, it's okay. Sometimes things just run their course, you know? Sometimes people grow apart, want different things. There's no shame in admitting that." Marcus looked at her warily, clearly unsure where this was going. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I think we should get a divorce." Elena delivered the words calmly, as if she were suggesting they change their weekend plans. Amicably, of course. No drama, no fighting. Just two adults acknowledging that their marriage has reached its natural end. The relief that flashed across Marcus's face was quickly hidden, but Elena had seen it. He thought he was getting out easy, thought Elena was going to let him walk away without consequences. He thought wrong. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," Elena continued, her voice still pleasant. "Filed the paperwork. You'll be served on Monday. I'm keeping the brownstone, of course. It was purchased primarily with my inheritance, and I'll be entitled to half the joint assets." The prenup is very clear on that point. Marcus's expression shifted from relief to alarm. "Wait, what? You already filed? Without discussing it with me first? Why would I need to discuss it?" Elena asked, all innocence. "You said yourself that you're happy, that everything's fine." But we both know that's not true, don't we, Marcus? She stood up, putting distance between them, and when she turned back to face him, her mask finally dropped. The pleasant smile vanished, replaced by something cold and hard and infinitely more honest. I know about Jade, she said simply. I've known for weeks. I know about the affair, the hotels, the messages, all of it. I have evidence, photographs, financial records, testimony. I have everything I need to make sure you lose in court, Marcus. Everything. The color drained from Marcus's face. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Elena, I can explain. I don't want your explanations, Elena said, her voice cutting like a blade. I don't want your apologies or your excuses or your promises to do better. I want you out of my house, out of my life, and I want you to understand that every choice you made, every lie you told, every moment you spent with her instead of me, it all has consequences. The reckoning. Marcus stood up, his hands shaking, his face a mask of panic and rage. You can't do this. We can work this out. We really can't, Elena said. You destroyed us, Marcus. You took something good and real and you destroyed it for a 26-year-old associate who didn't even want you in the end. Did you know she broke up with you because I asked her to? That I gave her a choice, and she chose to end it rather than face the consequences? Marcus stared at her, shock and comprehension warring on his face. You talked to Jade? I did. I wanted to give her a chance to do the right thing. And unlike you, she took it. Elena picked up her brandy, took a sip, savored the burn. You're going to lose, Marcus. The divorce, the reputation, possibly your partnership at the firm once word gets out about your inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. You're going to lose everything. Elena, please. Marcus's voice broke, and for a moment, Elena felt something like pity stir in her chest. But only for a moment. Get out, she said quietly. Pack a bag and get out of my house. You can stay at a hotel until you figure out more permanent arrangements. This is my house too. Not according to the deed it isn't. Now get out before I call the police and have you removed. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, seeming to see her, really see her, for the first time in years. You've changed, he said finally. You're not the woman I married. Elena smiled, and it was genuine. No, I'm not. I'm better. She watched him go upstairs, listened to the sounds of him packing, heard the front door slam behind him 20 minutes later. And then she was alone in the brownstone that was now solely hers, standing in the wreckage of her marriage, feeling not grief or sadness, but something much more powerful. Liberation. To be continued in Part 3, The Ultimate Payback. Elena has set her plan in motion, but the game is far from over. What will Marcus do when he realizes the full extent of what he's lost? Will Jade Morrison find redemption, or will she be dragged down with him? And what secrets still lie buried, waiting to be revealed? The final chapter of Elena's revenge is about to unfold. The ultimate payback. The aftermath. The divorce papers were served to Marcus Hart at 10:17 a.m. on a Monday morning, in the middle of a partners' meeting at Whitmore & Associates, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. The process server had been chosen carefully, professional, discreet, but impossible to ignore. Every partner in the room watched as Marcus opened the envelope, watched the color drain from his face, watched his hands shake as he read the documents that would dismantle his life. Elena knew this because Rebecca had arranged for one of her associates to be in the building to witness and report back. And the report had been delicious. He tried to play it off, Rebecca told Elena over lunch at a trendy bistro in Soho. Claimed it was just routine legal documents, nothing to worry about. But everyone knew. You can't hide that kind of shock, that kind of fear. Elena sipped her wine, feeling satisfaction warm her from the inside out. Good. The senior partners requested a meeting with him later that afternoon, Rebecca continued. Word is already spreading about his relationship with Jade Morrison. The firm is going to have to investigate, possibly discipline him. An affair with a subordinate, using company resources, potential liability issues. It's a nightmare for them. Will he lose his partnership? Elena asked. Possibly. Probably. Depends on how much dirt you're willing to let me use in court. Rebecca's eyes gleamed with professional interest. How vindictive are you feeling? Elena considered the question. She'd spent weeks imagining this moment, imagining Marcus's downfall, imagining him stripped of everything he valued. But now that it was happening, She found her feelings were more complicated than simple vindictiveness. She was angry, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But she also felt something like exhaustion, a weariness that came from carrying hatred and pain for so long. I want him to face consequences, Elena said finally. But I don't want to become someone who destroys just for the sake of destroying. I want justice, not cruelty. Rebecca nodded, understanding. Then we'll take everything you're entitled to. The house, the assets, support if we can get it. But we won't actively try to ruin his career. We'll let the firm handle that themselves. Agreed, Elena said. But even as she said it, she knew the story wasn't over. Marcus wasn't the type to go down quietly, and Elena had learned enough about revenge to know that it had a way of spiraling beyond anyone's control. Marcus's countermove. 3 days after being served, Marcus showed up at the brownstone at 11 p.m., drunk and belligerent. Elena heard him before she saw him. The sound of his key in the lock, cursing when he realized she'd changed the locks, then pounding on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Elena, open the goddamn door. This is my house too. Elena stood in the hallway, her heart pounding, her phone in her hand with 911 ready to dial. She'd known this might happen, had prepared for it, but actually hearing the rage in her husband's voice was different from imagining it. Go away, Marcus, she called through the door. You're not allowed in here. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. You can't do this, Marcus shouted, still pounding. You can't just kick me out of my own home, destroy my reputation, take everything I've worked for. Who the hell do you think you are? I'm your wife, Elena said, her voice cold and clear. The wife you betrayed for 6 months while spending our money on your mistress. The wife you lied to, disrespected, and took for granted. That's who I am. There was silence from the other side of the door. Then Marcus's voice came again, quieter now, almost pleading. Elena, please. Can we just talk? Really talk, without lawyers and accusations? I made a mistake, okay? I know I fucked up, but we can fix this. We've been together 7 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Elena's hand tightened on her phone. Part of her, a small, weak part she hated, wanted to open the door, wanted to believe that they could fix what was broken, that the man she'd loved still existed somewhere beneath the liar and cheat Marcus had become. But she knew better. It meant everything to me, she said, her voice breaking despite her determination to stay strong. Our marriage, our vows, our life together, it meant everything. But clearly it didn't mean the same to you. If it had, you never would have done what you did. Elena, I loved you, Marcus. I loved you so much that I ignored all the signs, convinced myself that everything was fine even when it clearly wasn't. I made excuses for you, trusted you, believed in you. And you betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. She pressed her hand against the door, as close to him as she would allow herself to get. So no, we can't talk. There's nothing left to say. She heard him slide down against the door, heard what might have been a sob or might have been just exhausted breathing. They stayed like that for several minutes, separated by inches of wood but miles of betrayal. And then she heard him stand up, heard his footsteps retreating down the stairs, heard the sound of a car, doors slamming, and an engine starting. Elena sank to the floor, her back against the door, and finally allowed herself to cry. Not for Marcus or for their marriage, but for the person she'd been before all this started, the naive, optimistic woman who'd believed in happily ever after. That woman was gone now, and Elena wasn't sure if she'd ever get her back. The trial of public opinion. New York society, particularly the rarefied circles Elena and Marcus had moved in, operated on gossip and scandal the way other organisms operated on oxygen. Within a week of Marcus being served, everyone who was anyone knew about the affair, about the divorce, about the spectacular implosion of what had seemed like a perfect marriage. Elena handled it with grace and dignity, neither confirming nor denying the rumors, simply allowing the truth to speak for itself. She continued going to work, attending gallery events, maintaining her social obligations. People watched her with a mixture of sympathy and fascination, wondering how she could be so composed when her world was falling apart. What they didn't understand was that Elena's world had already fallen apart weeks ago. This was just the cleanup. Marcus, on the other hand, was not handling things well. He'd moved into a corporate apartment in Midtown, thrown himself into work with manic intensity, and started drinking more than was wise for someone trying to salvage their reputation. Elena heard about it through the grapevine, how he'd been seen drunk at a bar, ranting about unfair wives and vindictive women, how he'd shown up late to court, disheveled and unprepared, how he'd yelled at a junior associate so violently that HR had been called. He was unraveling, and part of Elena felt guilty for causing it. But only part. Jade's redemption. 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Elena received an unexpected email from Jade Morrison. Dear Elena, I know I have no right to contact you, and I understand if you delete this without reading it. But I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about you every day since our conversation in the gallery. I wanted you to know that ending things with Marcus was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the right thing. I've spent the last few weeks in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone who could do what I did. I don't have good answers. I was lonely, ambitious, flattered by the attention of a powerful man. I told myself it was love, that it justified the deception. But I know now that real love doesn't require you to hurt other people. I'm leaving Whitmore and Associates. I've accepted a position at a legal aid clinic. Less money, less prestige, but work that actually means something. Work that helps people instead of hurting them. It's my attempt at penance, I suppose. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I wanted you to know that you changed my life that night in the gallery. You showed me what real strength looks like, and I'm trying to find some of that strength in myself. I'm sorry. For everything. Jade. Elena read the email 3 times, feeling something complicated and uncomfortable shift in her chest. She thought about ignoring it, thought about sending back a scathing reply, thought about forwarding it to Rebecca as more evidence of Jade's guilt. Instead, she found herself typing a response. Jade, I appreciate your honesty, and I'm glad you're trying to make better choices. What you did was wrong, but I don't believe it defines who you are as a person. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after. I hope your new position brings you fulfillment. And for what it's worth, I do forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let go of this anger. Take care of yourself. Elena. She hit send before she could second-guess herself, and immediately felt lighter, as if she'd set down a heavy burden she'd been carrying for too long. The settlement negotiation. The divorce negotiations were brutal. Marcus fought her on everything. The house, the assets, even the furniture. His lawyers painted Elena as a vindictive spouse trying to capitalize on a momentary indiscretion, while Elena's lawyers methodically documented every betrayal, every lie, every cent Marcus had spent on his affair. The evidence was damning. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, all made with joint funds while Marcus was supposed to be working late. Text messages showing that he'd lied about business trips, using them as cover to spend weekends with Jade. Testimony from colleagues who'd noticed inappropriate behavior between Marcus and Jade at the office. By the time Rebecca was done presenting their case, Marcus's lawyers looked shell-shocked. My client is willing to settle, Marcus's lead attorney said during a particularly contentious mediation session. He'll agree to a 60-40 split in Elena's favor, plus the house and half the retirement accounts. Not good enough, Rebecca said immediately. My client wants 70-30, the house with no encumbrance, 3/4 of the retirement accounts, and continued health insurance coverage for 2 years. That's excessive. What's excessive is your client carrying on an affair for 6 months, spending marital assets on his mistress, and then having the gall to fight the victim of his infidelity in court. Rebecca's voice was ice. My client has been more than generous. She could have gone after his partnership, filed complaints with the Bar Association, made this much uglier than it is. Instead, she's simply asking for what she's entitled to under the law. The negotiations went on for hours, both sides giving ground reluctantly, until finally a settlement was reached, 65-35 split in Elena's favor. The brownstone went to her entirely. She got 60% of the retirement accounts, and Marcus would pay her legal fees. When Elena signed the final agreement, she felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound sense of completion. It was over. The unexpected twist. But as it turned out, it wasn't over. 3 days before the divorce was set to be finalized, Elena received a call from Jack Morrison, the private investigator she'd thought she was done working with. Mrs. Hart, he said, his voice grave. I think you need to come to my office. There's something you need to see. Elena's stomach dropped. What is it? I'd rather show you in person. Can you come today? An hour later, Elena sat in Jack's cramped office in a nondescript building in Queens, watching as he pulled up files on his computer. I was closing out your case, Jack explained, doing a final sweep to make sure I hadn't missed anything. And I found something odd, a bank account in the Cayman Islands under Marcus's name. Elena's pulse quickened. An offshore account. Why would he have that? That's what I wondered. So I did some digging. Jack pulled up a series of documents, financial statements that made Elena's head spin. Mrs. Hart, your husband has been moving money offshore for the past 3 years. Significant amounts. We're talking millions. Millions. Elena stared at the numbers, unable to process what she was seeing. How is that possible? We accounted for all our assets in the divorce. You accounted for the assets he disclosed, Jack corrected. But he's been siphoning money from the firm for years, hiding it in offshore accounts, shell corporations, fake investments. He's been preparing for something. Maybe he was planning to leave you all along, or maybe he was just embezzling. Either way, this is serious. This is criminal. Elena's mind was racing. The firm doesn't know about this? I don't think so. If they did, they would have already reported it. This is fraud, Mrs. Hart. Major fraud. If this gets out, Marcus won't just lose his partnership. He'll go to prison. Elena sat back in her chair, the weight of this new information settling over her like a blanket. She'd thought she knew the extent of Marcus's betrayal, thought she'd uncovered all his secrets. But this was something else entirely. This was criminal behavior, the kind that could destroy not just Marcus but potentially innocent people at the firm, clients who'd trusted him with their money and legal matters. What do I do? Elena asked quietly. Jack looked at her seriously. That's up to you. You could take this information and use it in the divorce, force him to turn over the hidden assets, make sure you get what you're actually entitled to. Or you could report it to the authorities, let justice take its course even if it means your ex-husband goes to prison. Those are my only options. Well, there's a third option, Jack said slowly. You could keep this information to yourself. Take the divorce settlement you've already negotiated and walk away. Let Marcus keep his secrets and his freedom. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well. Elena thought about it, thought about what each choice would mean. She could destroy Marcus completely, expose his fraud, send him to prison, take every penny he'd hidden away. It would be the ultimate revenge, the total payback he deserved. Or she could let it go. She could take her settlement, her house, her freedom, and move on with her life while Marcus lived with the constant fear of discovery, the knowledge that his house of cards could collapse at any moment. Which kind of person did she want to be? The choice. Elena took 3 days to decide. She consulted with Rebecca, who advised reporting the fraud. She thought about the victims, the clients and colleagues who might be harmed by Marcus's crimes. She thought about justice and vengeance and the difference between the two. And in the end, she made a choice that surprised everyone, including herself. She called the senior partners at Whitmore and Associates and requested a private meeting. In a conference room high above Manhattan, with Rebecca beside her and Jack's evidence in a briefcase at her feet, Elena told them everything. She showed them the offshore accounts, the shell corporations, the pattern of embezzlement that had been going on under their noses for years. She watched their faces go from skeptical to shocked to furious as they realized the scope of Marcus's betrayal. Why are you telling us this? One of the senior partners asked. You could have used this in your divorce, taken everything. Because this isn't about me anymore, Elena said simply. This is about doing the right thing. Marcus betrayed me, but he also betrayed you, your firm, your clients. People have a right to know when they've been stolen from, even if it complicates my own situation. The senior partner studied her for a long moment. You're a remarkable woman, Mrs. Hart. I'm just someone who's tired of lies, Elena replied. The firm launched an immediate investigation. Within a week, they'd confirmed everything Jack had found and more. Marcus was fired, his partnership revoked, and criminal charges were filed. The firm made restitution to the affected clients, and Marcus's assets, both disclosed and hidden, were seized. Elena's divorce settlement had to be renegotiated given the changed circumstances, but in the end, she came out with more than she'd originally asked for. The brownstone free and clear, a significant cash settlement, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd done the right thing even when it would have been easier to do the wrong thing. 6 months later, Elena stood in her brownstone, now fully redecorated to reflect her own taste rather than the compromise aesthetic she and Marcus had settled on. The last traces of their marriage had been erased. New furniture, new art on the walls, new everything. She'd thrown herself into her work at the gallery, taking on more responsibilities, curating shows that gained critical acclaim. She'd traveled, 2 weeks in Paris, a weekend in Barcelona, places she'd always wanted to visit but had never gotten around to while maintaining the fiction of a perfect marriage. She'd started therapy, working through the trauma and betrayal, learning to trust her own judgment again. She'd reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with, made new friends who knew her as Elena rather than as Marcus's wife. She'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a nice accountant she'd met at a charity event, dinner with an artist whose work she'd shown at the gallery. She wasn't ready for anything serious, might not be for a long time, but she was open to possibility again. As for Marcus, he'd pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement and was serving a 5-year sentence at a minimum security facility upstate. Elena had been asked if she wanted to provide a victim impact statement at his sentencing, but she declined. She'd said everything she needed to say to Marcus that night when she'd kicked him out of her house. Anything more would have been redundant. The gallery opening. Elena was at a gallery opening. Not her own gallery this time, but a contemporary space in Bushwick that was showcasing emerging artists when she saw Jade Morrison across the room. The younger woman had cut her hair short, wore less makeup, dressed more casually than she had in her corporate days. She looked healthier, Elena thought, more at peace with herself. They made eye contact, and after a moment's hesitation, Jade made her way over. "Elena," she said, her voice uncertain. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I go to a lot of openings," Elena replied, her tone neutral. "Occupational hazard of being a curator." "Right, of course." Jade shifted uncomfortably. "How are you?" "I'm good, actually," Elena said, and realized it was true. "Really good." "You?" "Better than I have any right to be," Jade admitted. "The legal aid work is challenging but rewarding. I'm helping people who actually need help, making a real difference. It's humbling." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, 2 women connected by betrayal and mutual suffering, neither quite sure what to say to the other. "I heard about Marcus," Jade said finally. "About the embezzlement and the prison sentence." "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Elena said. "He made his choices. Now he's facing the consequences. That's how it should be. Still, it can't have been easy for you." Elena considered this. It wasn't. But nothing about the last year has been easy. "I've learned that sometimes the hardest things are also the most necessary." Jade nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Thank you for emailing me back that day. I know I didn't deserve your kindness, but it meant more to me than you know." "We all deserve kindness," Elena said, "even when we've done things we're not proud of. The question is what we do with that kindness, whether we use it to become better people or with just as permission to keep making the same mistakes." "I'm trying to be better," Jade said earnestly. "Every day I'm trying." "That's all any of us can do," Elena replied. They parted ways after that, Jade disappearing into the crowd while Elena continued browsing the exhibition. And Elena realized something important. She didn't hate Jade anymore. She didn't hate Marcus either, not really. Hatred required too much energy, too much focus on the past. Instead, she felt something closer to indifference, the same way she might feel about strangers she passed on the street. People who'd once been important, but were now just characters in a story that had already ended. The epilogue. A year after signing the divorce papers, Elena held her own exhibition at Galerie Moderne, a collection of contemporary pieces exploring themes of betrayal, redemption, and transformation. The show was called Phoenix Rising, and it was a critical and commercial success. At the opening reception, surrounded by friends and colleagues and art lovers, Elena gave a speech about the concept behind the exhibition. "We all experience betrayal in our lives," she said, her voice clear and strong in the hushed gallery. "Sometimes it's small, a broken promise, a forgotten anniversary. Sometimes it's catastrophic, infidelity, fraud, the destruction of everything we thought we knew. And when we're in the immediate aftermath of that betrayal, it feels like the end of the world. It feels like we'll never recover, never trust again, never be whole again." She paused, looking around at the faces watching her, seeing understanding and empathy in their eyes. But the truth is, we're more resilient than we think. We have the capacity to transform pain into strength, betrayal into wisdom, endings into new beginnings. Like the phoenix, we can rise from the ashes of what destroyed us and become something even more beautiful than we were before. She raised her glass. This exhibition is dedicated to everyone who's ever felt broken and found the courage to put themselves back together. May we all find our wings. The room erupted in applause, and Elena smiled. A real smile, genuine and warm and full of hope for the future. She'd survived the fire. She'd risen from the ashes. And she continued 15:38 D emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more herself than she'd ever been before. Marcus had thought breaking her would be easy, that she would crumble under the weight of his betrayal. He'd been wrong. Elena Hart wasn't the kind of woman who broke. She was the kind who rebuilt herself into something unbreakable. And that, she thought as she sipped her champagne and basked in the success of her exhibition, was the ultimate revenge.